Hello, everyone. Welcome to our live member Q&A podcast with the Alliance of Independent Authors. We're going to let things open up and let folks stream on in and get comfortable. But in the meantime, while you're doing that, we would love to know where you're streaming in from. So where are you from? And just something else. What genre do you write? So what genre do you write, your name, and where you're from? So how are you, Sacha?
I am pretty good. I had a nap this morning.
Those are the best.
Right? The morning started
Saturday morning
rocky.
naps.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The morning started rocky, and then things got a lot better. So because I had a nap and a coffee. I had a coffee and then I had a nap, which is like,
oh wow. And you were able to sleep?
I mean, it was so weird. Like I literally drank the coffee. I was playing games with my 10-year-old, and we got partway through this word game, and I was literally like, buddy, I'm gonna have to stop. And I just went and I laid on the floor with a pillow in my office, and down I went.
there you go.
It was impressive. Nap. It was
that is impressive. I'm one of those people I can sleep with coffee too. Like I can have a coffee right before bed. And it does nothing. Now it depends on the coffee, I guess. Like if it's like a super dark roast, then yeah, I probably won't be able to sleep. But if it's like a, light roast,
yeah,
I got no problem. And I don't know what that says about me, the fact that I can sleep with coffee, but it works for me.
Isn't it it's like a power. There's a particular name that I can't remember what the name is, but there's a particular name for a nap after a coffee, but it has some kind of crazy name. Yeah. Anyway.
Power coffee nap, caffeine nap.
Something like that. I can't remember what it is. But how are you anyway?
I'm great. Yeah, I'm great. Oh yeah. And I guess that leads us to a public service announcement. So I guess there are probably some people who might be watching this that are like, who are these people? Why are they talking to us? So every quarter, first off, this is the member Q&A live podcast. So I'm Michael Ronn. This is Sacha Black. We're with Ally, nonprofit organization by self-published writers for self-published writers. We exist to help authors achieve ethics and excellence in self-publishing, and also to help authors at every step of the publishing process, from the ideation of your books all the way up to the publishing and the marketing and even the rights licensing and copyright and some of the really cool stuff that you can do. And our website is selfpublishingadvice.org. And yes, and Sacha and I are both self-published writers, pretty successful self-published writers. And we have a show that goes live on our Ally podcast network every month. It's called the Ask Ally Member Q&A Self-Publishing Advice and Inspirations podcast. I threw a lot in there. It's a mouthful of a title, but we go live every month, or we have a podcast every month, but we do this live show every quarter, right? And so this is our second live show, and we like to go live just so that we can answer some of your guys' questions live. Maybe there's something specific that you're dealing with that just maybe isn't conducive for the format of our regular syndicated show. And so we're going to be here for the next hour, just shooting the breeze, having fun. I don't have a beer, but I've got a Sprite. So we'll be just chilling. Exactly. So maybe next time we'll have to make a point to bring a pint or something like that. But, yeah. So anyway, that is why we're here. So if you're watching this and you're like, these people are talking, this is interesting. That's why we're here. And we have a couple of public service announcements before we get into our first questions. And the first is that Sacha and I are going to be live, or we'll not live on the show, but we'll be in London. Sacha lives in London, but I'll be across the pond too for the London Book Fair next month. So I'll be there only on March 12th, but I'll be at the Ally booth. So if you listen to the show, you'd like to stop by and say hello, feel free. I would love to meet you. And Sacha will be there as well. And
I will be there on the 13th. So I'm on the Wednesday. Yes, okay, but so I will see you on the 12th, but I will see everybody else on the 13th.
Okay, so I'll be there on the 12th. Sacha will be there on the 13th. And then there will also be a gathering for Ally members. So if you're a paid Ally member, stay tuned to your newsletter. And all of that information should come on through on where we'll be meeting, the date and the time, all that stuff. But it will be in London. Can you clarify what area, just for people who are listening so they know?
Yes. So the London Book Fair is at Kensington Olympia. And that is a tube station as well. So it is in the Kensington Olympia exhibit centre. And I already know that the Ally party is on the Wednesday the 13th. So, but then the location, obviously that information will go out to members.
Okay, awesome. And yeah, I'm assuming because it's at a tube station, should be relatively easy to get to.
Yes,
right?
it is.
So
yeah.
Yeah, but we'd love to meet you. I mean, we've been doing this show, Sacha and I think we've been doing it for about a year, right? You and I together.
It might even be a little bit more than that now.
A little bit longer than a year. So
because I think I think I was doing it with you even when I went to South Africa, which was 2022.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I missed that one.
Yeah, it has definitely been a while. And this show has been around for over 10 years. So, and I think I've been on this show for about half of that. This is, I think, my 5th year. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I can't believe I've been doing this show that long. But yeah, so anyway, we'd love to meet you in person. You know, it's always fun when I go to writing conferences. I always get people that come up to me and say, "Hey, I listened to you on Ally," and it's always great to meet members and great to meet fellow listeners of the show. So with that, do we have anything else you want to talk about, Sacha? Oh, that's right.
I was just going to say to everybody watching, please do drop your questions in the comments. Like, we are happy to answer any self-publishing, writing, marketing, craft questions that you may have. So go on ahead and drop them in. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, we're here to answer your questions. So the first question is from Ruth. And the question is, I need to hire the services of a qualified person to review my new ebook. How do I do that?
It depends what you mean by review. Is this sort of an editorial review? Is that what we're going to assume, or?
Yeah, just reading between the lines, I think it is.
Or is it reviewers?
Why don't we answer it in two paths? The first path is, how do you get reviews? And then the second path is, how do you hire a freelancer like an editor or a cover designer?
Yeah.
To review to help you produce the book. Just to make sure we're covering all the bases.
So we do have a how to get your first 50 reviews guide on Ally's platforms. So if you're a member, you get that download for free. And if you're not a member, then you can purchase it by visiting selfpublishingadvice.org/bookshop. I think is the correct link.
I believe that's correct. Yes.
So yeah, if you're not a member, you can grab that there. I mean, my biggest advice is to build yourself a street team. How do you build yourself a street team? Well, you make friends with people online. It's the first thing you do. You promote your content. You go ahead and pitch people. So I'd spend a lot of time trawling across social media looking for bookstagrammers, TikTokers who love to post about books in my specific genre. So I'm very, very specific with it. I don't just sort of broad brush approach people. I make sure that they read. So I look at their profile, I look at the books they've read. Sometimes I'll look at their Goodreads, and I'll make sure that they're the right type of reviewer for my book before I approach them. And then I approach them. This is what I did with the first book in the Girl Games series, which was all starting again kind of for me because it was a new pen name. And hey, I got a lot of rejections because that name was a brand new pen name. But you forge on, you spend a lot of time doing that. If you've built a mailing list already, which I had done a little bit of that, I'd created a prequel, which I had promoted through some promos on BookFunnel and various different places. So I got a few advanced readers from that. There are So here's the difficult thing with reviews. You cannot pay people to review your book, but what you can do is use middlemen management services. So for example, and I'm not necessarily recommending any of these, I'm just giving you names. NetGalley is quite an expensive version of this. They will host your book and liaise with reviewers. Booksprout, there's lots and lots of organizations like that. Even BookFunnel and Story Origin, you can do the same kind of thing and join promos to get reviewers. So there are lots and lots of different ways that you can do that. But basically, this is sort of the grunt work, I would say, of marketing, is to try and get those initial reviews. And once you get one or two, you're much more likely to be able to get a few more. It's a weird sort of flywheel motion with reviews, I think. And just the last thing is you can give it away. Like you could, spend a day or 24 hours or 48 hours giving the book away for free, and then get some newsletter promos on it. Like, if you were lucky enough to get a BookBub, or Written Word Media do promo stacks where you can run the book for free. And certainly if you do a free run, you will get an increase in reviews. So I don't know if you want to answer the flip side of that question.
Yeah, you answered that. I mean, that was super comprehensive. Can you talk a little bit more about what a street team is for anyone who doesn't know what that is?
Yeah, so a street team is basically a group of people who either like and know your work and therefore want to help you launch and promote your next book, or they don't know your work, but they like reading advanced reader copies. They like helping authors. So I have a street team running at the moment for my next release, which is House of Crimson Hearts. And it's about 50 people strong. And some of them only want to review the book. They don't want to do any social media stuff. Some only want to do social media stuff. Some want to do both. And basically, I provide a lot of assets. So cover images, templates where they can put their review quotes in. I give them information about the book. I could tell them about the tropes. And then each week I do challenges. So I'm like, this week, do a reel for me. And then basically everybody who posts gets put into a hat. And then at the end of the week, my virtual assistant will do a random plucker thing and they'll get a prize. And then the following week, it might be everybody post your reviews or everybody share your reviews. So basically it's a group of people that want to help. And then you can come up with lots and lots of different challenges and tasks and things that they can do that help basically spread the word about your book. And then there is one other thing, but it is like we used to have book tours that were like blog tours. This day and age, they're much more visual, physical tours with physical copies of your book. So there are these organizations that will have a group of BookTokers or Instagrammers who have hundreds of thousands of followers that are all bookish, and you pay them to organize a tour for you. You then pay for the physical copies of those books to be sent to those people, but then they produce, stunning photos for you. And they do work, because I have seen people successfully get into the top 100 using some of these, but I haven't used them, so I can't tell you, because they also haven't gone through our partner system, but some of them are very, very good. Also very, very expensive.
Yeah. And everything you said, I agree with 100%. I think the one thing we should also say is to make sure that you don't pay for reviews.
Yeah.
That is a really important part of this. I mean, you mentioned a lot of really good resources and all of that, but just make sure that you never pay a reader for reviews. There are, unfortunately, some unscrupulous services out there that will ask you for X number of dollars in exchange for a 5-star review. Just never, ever do that, because that, one, it's not ethical. Two, it's a violation of just about every retailer's terms of service that I can think of. And three, there have been a handful of authors throughout the ages over the last 10 years who have done that and who have paid the price, typically with their careers. So you don't want to be the person that pays for 5-star reviews, no matter how tempting it is. It's okay to offer a copy of your book in exchange for the review, and services like Booksprout and Book Sirens are good because you basically pay to access the readers, but you don't pay to influence the review. And I think as long as you're doing that, and again, just check with Ally, go to our website, selfpublishingadvice.org/ratings for a good directory of reputable services. If you've got any questions on, hey, is this above the line? Is it not above the line? Or if you're an Ally member, come to our member forum. And, if you've got a question about something, chances are you could probably search for the name of that service, and we can tell you, that'll tell you right away if it's good or not. And if you, for whatever reason, we haven't talked about it in our member forum, feel free to just make a post, and we'd be happy to talk through it with you. Let's go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say the one exception to that is an editorial review. So like a Kirkus. Now, I wouldn't necessarily, because obviously for Kirkus, it does cost you money, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's the best thing to do. You're not necessarily going to get a great return on that investment. But the one exception to one exception to paying for reviews is an editorial review, in which it gets sort of swept into their editorial people who review and write things about your books.
Exactly. And some people like to go after that. I've only found that, it's not in my personal experience, but in talking to people who have done it, that it's particularly helpful if you want to market for libraries to be able to go for editorial reviews, because librarians look at those as a way to determine if your book has social proof. If you're not going after libraries as to whether you do that, I think that's each and every person's decision. I personally think your money could probably better be spent elsewhere. But yeah, that's a really good distinction. I'm glad you brought that up, because that often comes up. So we should answer the second part of this, which is, how do you find a qualified freelancer to work on your book? So let's say you've published a book, you need an editor, you need a cover designer, you need a formatter.
The first place I always send people is to the Ally member forum. So allianceindependentauthors.com. Is it .com? Oh my God, I always get it wrong.
.org. It's .org, sorry.
.org, yeah, okay. So I knew it was something.
Yeah.
It sounds the same. allianceindependentauthors.org. And I've only been working for them for 4 years. And then what I do is I log in and I go on my homepage. You can either go to like the partner directory, because we have like a brochure that's a partner directory, or we also have like search for service. And then we also have the deals and discounts. So you can like go through those different ones and search for very specifically the type of editor or the type of formatter or whatever it is that you're looking for. You can search in our database, and anybody that is in that database has been through our vetted system. So you know that they are legitimate, and words are failing me, but whatever other words for legitimate are.
Reputable.
Yes, thank you. That's
honorable, ethical. There we go.
There we go. Between us, we make a great team.
Yeah, that's definitely that would be my first port of call as well. If you're an Ally member. Now, if you're not an Ally member, you can go to our recommended services services directory. I always forget the name, but services directory, and that's at selfpublishingadvice.org/ratings. And you can also see there for free, without behind a paywall or anything like that, just a list of editors and public services that provide author services. You can see if they're recommended, if maybe you should stay away, if they're our partner members, which means that they adhere to a heightened level of ethical standards. So that's also another really good place to look. And we always recommend that you start with Ally as your first port of call, because that's one of the critical services that we offer. We have a watchdog, John. That's his job. He just basically casts a wide net and looks at all the different services that are out there, and he rates them. And so being able to have access to a free database, and then also, if you're a member, a more detailed database where you can get some additional information is really good. Now, if for whatever reason you don't find who you're looking for on either of the services that Sacha and I mentioned. We would also recommend checking out a site like Readsy, right, where you can basically post your book and let the readers come to you, and you can set your own budget. There are other sites out there like Upwork that allow you to do the same thing, and those are great services because, like I said, you post your project and what you're needing and what your budget is, and people can come to you, or you can also find people on those sites as well by looking at their profiles. And another way, a third way, which I think could be another really viable way of finding service providers, is if it's an editor or a cover designer, look at other self-published books in your genre and look at the copyright page and see who they worked with. So if there's an author that you really like, and I say self-published because it's a lot harder to find the folks that do the traditional published route, and they're probably a lot more expensive. But if you can find a self-published writer that is publishing in the same genre as you, that has a really awesome cover, well, it's customary, usual and customary for authors to put their cover designer on the copyright page. So that, and you don't even have to buy the book to see that. You can just go to the look inside page on Amazon or the sample page on Kobo or wherever you buy your books, turn to the copyright page, which is usually in the front, not always, but usually in the front of the book. And that'll give you a place where you can find some freelancers as well. Okay. Next question is, it's kind of it's funny because we used to get this question a lot, Sacha, and this is the first time I've seen it in like 2 years. So the question is from Richard. I have republished my book with significant changes, and it's actually a two-part question. I've republished my book with significant changes, and I would like to remarket it. What path should I take?
The same path that anybody publishing a book would take. So I would basically try to drive as much traffic as possible to the book's sales page. And so there's a bit of a myth, I would say, because we don't have hard data. But if you can get your book to stay at a particular rank for about 3 weeks, there is some data to suggest that you will get some more organic pushing to help keep that book at that particular rank. If you then cease to do any marketing, it will obviously stop. But there is some evidence to say that if you can hold your rank for about that amount of time, then you will see some additional organic help. Now, to do that, what do you do? Well, you need to push as many eyes on that book as possible. So we've already talked about street teams. You can do big pushes, you can do advertising, you can, I mean, how do any of us do it? I do a lot of social media. I mean, at the moment for me, I'm doing TikTok quite a lot, and I've actually managed to reduce my ad spend down to virtually nothing whilst increasing my income about 6-fold because of TikTok. Does that mean it's going to work for everybody? No, of course not. It's not for everybody, but essentially you have to make sure that you've got a good product that people actually want, and then you need to drive an awful lot of traffic towards that page. So either you can do that via social media, you could do it via selling in person, you can do it via advertising, be it Amazon, be it Facebook, be it whatever else. But essentially you've got to force traffic to that book page in order to get it seen as much as humanly possible.
Yeah, agree. And so there's another part to this question that often comes up, which is if you make significant changes to your book, do you need to republish the book entirely, like under a new ISBN, or what do you think about that?
Usually they say 10%. They give you 10%. So if you've made more changes than 10%, then I would do it as a second edition. If it's sort of less than 10% changes, then I would just upload it again, if I'm honest.
Yeah. If you're making changes to the content, yeah, I would follow the 10% rule. If you're just changing the cover, I don't know that I would. You don't need a new edition. Nope. You don't need a new edition if you're changing the book description or fixing typos, that sort of thing. That question comes up frequently, so I just want to make sure that we address that. Okay, our next question is from Carly Munn. When setting up a PIN name, would it be better to set up a DBA checking account with the PIN name or filing a FBN statement with the local government?
That sounds like a very American-centric question.
Yeah, I don't know what FBN means, but I can definitely take it. So you're setting up a PIN name. So, your PIN name is Carly Jackson, right? It would be better to set up a DBA checking account. You cannot set up it depends on how you do it. So we have to kind of take a step back here and actually address the different types of businesses that you can create. And I'll try to keep this as non-American centric as I can. Sacha, jump in if I miss something from a UK perspective. But it's called a sole proprietor or a sole trader. And that is when you are simply setting up a doing business as designation. There is no legal difference between you or your business. It's just that you have a doing business as name. A lot of people like to set that up because it's easy, it's cheap, it's fast, no issues there. All right. So if you have a sole proprietor or sole trader, when you take out a bank account, you're going to take out a bank account in your own legal name. Now, you can have your DBA on the bank account, but the name is under your legal name. All right. Now, if you have an LLC, limited liability company, which I think is unique to there are limited liability companies elsewhere outside of the United States. I forget what they're called.
It's an LTD for us, a limited company.
LTD. Yeah, that's right. I always forget the abbreviations. Yeah, LTD. That is a separate. Well, in many cases, it is a separate entity from you and your business, but not always. There's some fine print things. You can take out a bank account in the name of your LLC, and because there is a legal separation between you and your business in that case, there are some tax implications that you have to be aware of. So taxes is kind of a big thing. I think if people are just starting out, I think it's perfectly acceptable to start as a sole proprietor. And then as you start to make more money, you start to understand the business, you start to understand how things are run and operated and what is expected of you to do your taxes every year. Then you can evolve into either an LLC or a corporation or a limited company. And those have a completely different set of requirements. So first question is, if you're going to have a PIN name, should you have a DBA? I think the answer is probably yes. Second part of that is, should you have a checking account dedicated to your business? I think the answer is regardless of what you do, you should do that. And then the last part of Carly Munn's question is filing a FBN statement with the local government. I think that's required no matter what you do. I don't know what FBN stands for, but you still have to fill out paperwork with your local authorities, regardless of what business entity you set up. Have any other thoughts on that, Sacha?
No, I mean, that's what I did. I was a sole trader, and then I changed to a company, just basically for tax reasons. But we're not giving tax advice here. Just to be clear on that. Or financial advice.
We're not giving tax advice. Yeah, tax or financial advice. We're just giving you self-publishing advice. All right. So the next question is from Ronn. Hopefully I said the name correctly. Ronn lives in Mumbai, India, and has just applied for copyright registration to register the copyright for their work. And the question that they have is that it's going to take 6 to 9 months for the government to finally give them a certificate of copyright registration. Should they publish their book in the meantime, or should they wait?
So yes, you can publish your book in the meantime, because that copyright, if you've filed, so are they saying they filed it in their own country, or they filed it in America? Because most people, when they file
it in their own country,
they filed it in their own country. I mean, yeah. So as far as I'm aware, you own the copyright the moment that product is finished. Isn't that correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Copyright's automatic.
Copyright is automatic. So yes, having a copyright statement would help if there were some sort of legal issue that you needed. But in law anyway, copyright is automatic because you are the creator. So I don't see any reason for you to wait. Most British indie authors do not submit copyright forms. Some submit it to America just because it, can help. But most of us don't do it. So I would just say go ahead and publish. I don't think there's any reason to hold back.
Yeah, I agree. Copyright is automatic from the moment you affix the words to the page. And I can't speak for India, but in the United States, there is an additional step you can follow if you want to register your copyright with the government so that you have the ability to sue someone if they commit copyright infringement down the road. I'm assuming India is probably something very similar, but that doesn't mean that you don't own the copyright. You have the copyright. As long as you've got your paperwork in order, I don't think there's any issues with going ahead to publish. Okay. And just a reminder, folks, we're answering your questions live, so don't forget to drop them in the chat if you would like us to weigh in on whatever issues you're dealing with right now. Our next question is from Leona. And Leona says that I have already fulfilled the requirement of sending a copy of my book to the British Library, but I have now received a claim from the Legal Deposit Library for 5 copies to be sent to them at my own expense. Is this legitimate?
Yes, I had that as well. I hadn't sent my book to the British Library, but they can request, I think it is 5 copies per library, and there are like a certain number of libraries that can request. I actually think it's 5 libraries that can request in the UK. I don't know what it is in other locations, but yes, that is a legitimate request. Unfortunately, I got slammed with that twice. Basically, I hide away from it. I probably shouldn't be confessing to that, but yeah, I sort of essentially hide away and just hope that they don't find me.
Good luck.
I know.
Yeah.
Don't tell my secrets.
Yeah. Well, we're all friends here. We'll keep it. We'll find some way to redact this part of the show later on. Okay. The next question is from member Michael, and the question is, what things should you be looking for in a service provider when you are looking to hire someone?
That's a good question. I think a reasonable response time. I think a clarity in expectations, some transparency on costings, and good manners is basically the sort of key things that I look for. Are they polite? Do they respond in a timely manner? Are they reliable? So do they do what they say they're going to do? And I also will look at some of their past customers, like what work have they already produced? What does it look like? Does it look high quality? Does it meet the needs that I have for this particular service? What are the reviews saying from other people? And if I know people that have used the service, I go and ask them.
Yeah, that's absolutely critical, is getting that social proof from other people. If you're using a service that is, pretty well known in the community, I think that's one thing. But looking at the reviews and looking at what other people have said, like on Facebook, like I don't know, I always like to look for the drama. Like I always try to type in like a cover designer or an editor, and like I type in like, the name plus drama or controversy or something like that.
Can you actually do this? This is my favorite thing in all the shows that we've done.
I 100% do that, because what I want to know is what things are going to look like if they go south. Because 9 times out of 10, as long as you do your due diligence and you pick the right person, you're never going to have a problem. And if you do have a problem, it's usually resolvable. It takes a minute to get on the same page, but there's no problems. But every 1 out of 10 times, something becomes a colossal disaster. I've had that happen to me twice, and so I've just been burned the wrong way. Maybe I'm just jaded.
I have not had great
Increasingly
luck with
cynical view of
designers.
the world.
Yeah. I've not had good luck with designers, I have to say.
Yeah, and you want to know that up front, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if a lot of times when people leave really, really bad, scathing reviews, often you could probably point the finger at that person too and say, well, what part did you play in this? But sometimes there's truth in what people are saying with those angry 1-star reviews, and sometimes there might be some red flags that you might want to look into. If you see red flags at all, if you see anything like that, that potentially could be a red flag. So yeah, I'm very cautious about who I work with, because I really do believe that if you take your time and you find the right person, it just makes everything 1,000% easier.
Yeah,
But
and I think you can then
happens.
build up a really good relationship and have somebody super consistent to work with.
Yeah. And once you find somebody good, that's the other part is,
Mm-hmm.
when you find somebody good, you can usually stick with them for at least a few years.
Yeah.
I've had cover designers that I work with that were amazing. And, I was able to get designs from them for 3 or 4 or 5 years. And, one of my designers left the business recently, and that was kind of sad, but that's not always the case. Sometimes you can find somebody and build a really good relationship with them. And that's ultimately what you're looking for too, is to be able to find somebody that you can partner with who's going to be reliable and dependable and easy to work with. Right. And of course, you mentioned the pricing, Sacha. I think that's critical. Absolutely critical. Because sometimes, freelancers do raise their prices. Like I've had cover designers raise their prices, and I've had editors raise their prices, and sometimes that's no fun. So, okay, we did get a response from Carly, and Carly says, "Oh, thank you. You really cleared up things. I think I was reading too much into the logistics of pen names. FBN means fictitious business name statement." There we go. Okay, now it's ringing a bell. Yeah, I'd never seen it as FBN acronym before.
I don't think I've ever heard that acronym before, so I've learned something this episode.
Well, that's why we do the show, right? We learn just as much as everybody else. Okay, so the next question is from Richard. Where do I need to use a 10-digit ISBN instead of the 13-digit ISBN?
So I don't know the answer to that. My hunch is that it's an internal systems thing, because we can only purchase 13-digit ISBNs. And I think what happens is the internal systems convert them into 10 digits. Not sure why. Maybe it knocks off the country code, because part of the digits of an ISBN is a country code. But all of my books have 10-digit ones above the 13-digit one. And I've never been asked for it, never had to use it. I only ever use the 13-digit one. So I think it's something that we probably don't need to worry about. I've been publishing a while, and I've never been asked for it. So I think it's just a systems thing.
I agree. I just used the 13 one and have never had a problem. And I seem to remember, and maybe I just misremember this, but I seem to remember reading a long, long time ago that the only reason they went from 10 to 13 was because they were running out of digits. Like all of the 10 were taken. And so by moving to 13, it gave them, I don't know
X billion more. Yeah.
Exponentially more ISBNs to be able to use. But somebody can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But I distinctly remember reading that in an article somewhere.
That sounds logical enough to be true. We'll go with it.
Yeah, we'll go with it. And somebody can plaster my name all over Facebook if I'm wrong.
With drama next to it.
With drama. Michael Ronn plus drama. Put that into Google and see what happens. All right.
Slams ISBN industry.
Exactly. Well, there definitely is some slamming to be done, but that's a whole nother topic for another conversation. Okay, the next question is from Carol. This is more of a trademark question. So there's some specific titles in here that I'm not going to go into. generically, and I can take this question to Sacha, but generically, what is the difference between copyright and trademark? I've started to see a number of people ask questions about trademark, and trademark is kind of complicated. It's not the same thing as copyright. So a book is something that you copyright. A copyright is a form of expression that is protected. So if I were to write a book about a robot gunslinger, that idea in and of itself is not copyrightable, right? Anyone can write a book about a robot gunslinger. You could do it, Sacha. Carol could do it. Anyone who is watching could do it. But if I start my book with the line, it was the best of robot times and the worst of robot times, that line itself, that is an expression, right? No one else could start their novel with it was the best of robot times, the worst of robot times, because that particular expression is copyrighted. So copyright protects the expression of your story, how the words are formed on the page. Only you can form them on the page in that particular way, which is why I can't go and take an excerpt from a Stephen King novel and put it into my book, right? Because I get sued like it was 1993. So that's copyright, right? Trademark is an asset that a business owns that distinguishes that business in the marketplace. So, for example, if I have the Nike logo, the swoosh logo, right? If I'm Nike, I own that. That if I put that swoosh on a shoe, everybody in the world knows what that is, right? Because that is a distinctive logo that makes Nike stand out in the marketplace. All right. Same thing with Adidas, same thing with Puma, all the logos. If I have a slogan that says just do it, that is also a trademark. That's something that I can trademark. So when I trademark that, what I'm simply saying is no one else can put that logo or that slogan on a product to distinguish it in the marketplace, because to do so would create customer confusion, and that could potentially harm my business. All right. So that is the difference between copyright and trademark. Now, you cannot trademark a book because that just doesn't make any sense. But you can certainly trademark you can trademark a series title, and you can also trademark character names. Those are two of the big things that
so
often
like Harry
come
Potter,
up.
for example.
Harry Potter, it would be an example of a trademark. All right. Now you could trademark titles, but that's a little bit more complicated. It's got to be a really specific type of title. But yes, you can trademark series names. And the downside to trademarks is that trademarks are retroactive. So if you trademark something, you technically then have the right, if it gets accepted, to enforce that trademark. And there are certainly have been authors in the past that have tried to get authors who have published books long before them with a name that affects their trademark to remove that book from the market.
Yeah, that doesn't go down very well, though.
It does not go down very well. Don't do that. Please don't. I'm not even going to say please. Just don't do that, because that, frankly, is one of the stupidest things you can do. Just look up. I won't even say names, but there have been a few times throughout the last probably Sacha, 6-7 years where people have tried to do that, and it just does not go well at all. Now, there is a time and a place to trademark your work, right? If you wanted to trademark your author name, if you have a series that's really successful and you're doing merchandising or certain types of branding, there is a time and a place for it. But generally speaking, that is the difference between trademark and copyright. And what I'm seeing just in emails that are coming to me are just authors that don't understand that distinction and who are trying to, trying to claim that they own a trademark or a copyright over something when in reality they have no understanding of what that is. So, what I would have told people 5 years ago is that copyright is probably the most important thing that you need to be focused on as an author. I think now increasingly, though, trademark is starting to get its tentacles into our business, and I'm not really a fan of it personally. I think trademarks are complicated. I think they're expensive. I think they're just a nightmare logistically to plan, because your trademark is only valid in the country that you file it. So, I had a trademark for, God, 10 years ago. I had a trademark 10 years ago. It cost me several $1,000s to create, and that trademark was only valid in the United States. So are you going to go and create a trademark in England and in Australia and Canada and every country in the world? I mean, just think about how much money that would cost, right? So it's just not something that I think that is very applicable to what we do, unless you have a very specific circumstance. The only thing that I think we have to pay attention to is you just need to be a little careful about your series titles and the names of any properties that you own. And it might not be a bad idea to start going to the trademark database in your country and just see if there's anything that registers in that series name, just in the event that there is an author that does try to enforce a trademark down the road. But even then, still difficult. I know that was a really long answer, but that essentially is the difference between copyright and trademark. Okay, now we're going to stop talking about legal stuff for a bit. Okay, so the next question is from Troy. What is a good marketing strategy for the first book when you are trying to build your audience?
So I feel like we sort of covered some of this earlier. I mean, for me, the best marketing strategy that I do is to understand the genre. The best marketing that I do is before I even start writing the book. And it is to understand the tropes, the structure, the expectations of the reader. So for me, expectations include anything that is a pattern found within multiple books that are bestseller books within your genre. And I know this sounds very backwards to be talking about the craft before we're talking about the practical, tangible marketing. But honestly, this is how I have become a full-time author. So for me, I will read multiple books in the top 100 in my genre, and I will spot patterns. That's anything that happens more than 3 times. 2 times is a connection, 3 times is a pattern. And so I look at tropes, structure, I look at pacing, I look at character types, archetypes, all of the stuff. I basically gobble all of these books, and then I work out what it is that is the most frequently occurring and how I can do that but better. And then I go away and do that. Then once I've done that, the reason that I do that is because I don't know if anybody can hear, my cat is scratching the door. The reason that I do that is because those things that are the expectations become the things that I market, because that is what the readers want, and therefore I will be talking the reader's language. And so once you've done all those things, once you then have a cover that is to genre and would be indistinguishable on a shelf next to all of the other best-selling books in that genre, then you do what we talked about at the beginning, which is to drive as much traffic as humanly possible to that book page, wherever you are selling it. So, and you do that by either gathering a group of people to help you launch, getting reviews on that book. You can do advertising, you can build a social media platform. So yeah, those are all the kinds of things that I do. And also, actually, if you want to hear, so I started a new pen name last February. In fact, it's been a year. I started a new pen name in February 2023, and I did a podcast episode on my podcast, the Rebel Author Podcast. And I think it's between episode 176 and 177, something like that. But if you go back to last February, April, May, something like that, you'll be able to find it. And it's on building a brand new pen name in 2023. So how did I start doing that? And I've given loads and loads of lessons, all of the different things. And for Troy, who's just sort of mentioned that he thought that was a good idea, I sort of give you all of the things that I did doing that, researching the genre essentially, and finding all those bits and pieces that you need in order to deliver to reader expectations.
Awesome. And speaking of pen names, Tamara says, amazing
Ah.
Kickstarter, Sasha. Can't wait for the book. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Oh my goodness me. Yeah, I've learned so much about Kickstarter. So I'm doing a Kickstarter for my lesbian vampire romance book. That's spicy, just to be clear. And it's just blown my mind, to be perfectly honest.
It's been amazing. Yeah.
Kickstarter, for those that don't know, is a crowdfunding platform. So essentially, you get people to pledge a certain amount of money, and in exchange for that money, they get particular rewards that get sent to them once the campaign is closed. And those rewards are called tiers. And you can do things like an ebook tier where they'll get digital rewards, and then you can do a physical tier. So then I've got just the special edition book, and then I've got a book box, and then I sort of the tiers go up. And the reason that these things work, so you don't just do any kind of book. What you tend to do is something a little bit more special. So for me, I've got shiny rainbow holographic foiling. You sort of can't really see it too much in here, but maybe if I put it here, you can see all like the shiny foiling. So I'm working with Book Vault to do that. I've got color artwork inside it, naughty artwork inside it, head and tail bands, ribbons and things. So you can really do all sorts of interesting things that you wouldn't necessarily be able to do just with a print on demand like standard book. So yeah, if you have an audience, I think Kickstarter is fantastic. You can build an audience on Kickstarter as well. I think there is a different type of reader on Kickstarter. So if you haven't, as an indie author, explored it, I think it's a really good thing to investigate to see whether or not you can build it into your business model. It's really empowering. And really, it's like a fun new project. I'm really excited just to do the simple thing of like packing the boxes. I know that sounds super nerdy, but yeah.
Yeah, to Kickstarter is definitely an attention to detail kind of thing. So yeah, awesome. Congrats on all your success on that. That's amazing. We have a couple more questions that are coming in from Vanessa. What is the best way to format a novel? Is it best to hire someone since it may be overwhelming for a beginner?
I think a few years ago, I would say, yes, hire someone, but I think that's not necessarily the case anymore. I tried to format my first book pre-Vellum and pre-Atticus, and I tried to do it in Word, and it was the worst 18 hours of my life.
And just 18 hours? Took me way longer than that. Took me weeks to format my first book in Word. Yeah. Back in the bad old days when we had to walk 3 miles to school one way.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we're laughing because we've been around for a while. Remember the pain of having to format. Don't format unless you're using formatting software, because it is a real headache. That's not to say you can't do it. It's just that it's a real headache. There is now 2 pieces of software that make it a lot easier for you. The first one is Vellum, Vellum, and that is for Mac only. So unless you have an Apple Mac computer, you can't use it. And I don't know, it's like $250, $300, something along those lines. But then it's one payment and you get it forever. And it will do all of the formats for you. It's very intuitive. I can format a fiction book in about 45 minutes using it, maybe even less sometimes. And then Atticus is like dual system. So you can use Atticus software on a Mac or on a PC. It's a one payment system, and then it will spit out the correct files for you. I haven't used Atticus, so I can't vouch for it, but I know people that have used it. And then if you do want to hire somebody, the one thing that I would say about hiring somebody, obviously it takes all the stress away, which is fantastic. But if later down the line you spot a typo, or you want to update a link in the back of your book, or you want to add, more books by this author or something along those lines, you then have to pay that person to do that editing, edit the format for you to give you the correct updated files once again. So it's like a cost, time, money sort of situation. If you would still like to hire somebody, then go to Ally's directory and look up formatters. We have a ton of people in there, and you can do that by going to allianceindependentauthors.org and logging into the dashboard and searching through the services. And then also don't forget that we have deals and discounts.
Yes. Okay. Next question is, Michael, do you edit intuitively? I know you use the Dean Wesley Smith way to draft stories. Yes, I do. I've done some videos on my YouTube channel about this. Just go to authorlevelup. Just go to youtube.com/authorlevelup. And then on my channel, just search for Writing into the Dark. And I talk about my editing process and all of that. I would love to talk about that, but we're kind of short on time, and it's a bit of a can of worms. And once you wind me up, I sometimes don't stop. So, but yes, I've got a lot of videos on writing into the dark and editing and writing without an outline and all that good stuff. Okay. Next question is, I've looked into Gatekeeper Press and was curious, what are your opinions on self-publishing services like them? Yeah, Gatekeeper Press is, if you go to selfpublishingadvice.org/ratings, they're listed as a partner member in our directory. So that means that they follow the highest standards, and you would be in good hands if you chose to work with them. But you'd have to do your research and just look into them and make sure they're a good fit for you. They are a hybrid publishing company, so if you for whatever reason you can't or don't want to do your own self-publishing, they can certainly assist you with that. And as I said, they are listed as a partner member. Okay, and looks like we've got a couple more questions. Sacha, we'll cap it here at 2 more questions. Is it okay legally and socially to copy a scene from an IP that you don't own? Everybody say with me, no. Don't do that.
No, look at my face, the horror on my face. No.
Everybody say no.
No.
Unless you have the kind of money that Quentin Tarantino has. No. Now, it's one thing if, there's a pattern, like, you want to borrow elements from a scene, but you have to use your own words and you have to use your own style. You never want to copy anything from another IP.
Well, it's like the easiest way to explain this is with tropes. Anybody can use enemies to lovers as a trope, but the expression and manifestation of that is different in every single book that you read. So you could take enemies to lovers as a concept, but you can't take the expression of Beauty and the Beast, for example, right? Or maybe that's not a great example because that might be out of copyright. I don't know. But anyway,
that's in the public domain. But your point stands.
Was a terrible example.
You can't. No. But you can't do it from Disney's Beauty and the Beast.
Right.
That
exactly.
would be an example. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, and then our final question is also from Elvis. How do you keep an editor or beta reader from potentially stealing your work or parts of your work? I'll say this, Elvis. I don't think it's really something that you have to worry about. As we talked about earlier, copyright, you own the copyright to your work from the moment it is affixed to the page. There is a certain level of trust that you have to build with an editor and a beta reader. And if you don't trust them, then I would argue that you shouldn't be hiring them in the first place. Now, it's just not customary for people to do that. Plus, there's going to be a paper trail. It'll be obvious if someone stole your copyright that you emailed it to them, that you paid them for it or whatever. We get these questions from people that are concerned about that. And honestly, I think that you have 10,000 other problems that you need to worry about as an author, especially if you're writing your first book. I would argue that that's not one that you need to worry about. Sacha,
because even if they like the idea, they still have to write a book to copy it, right?
Right.
And we all know how air quote easy that is.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things. I mean, now, has that happened at some point in history? I'm sure it has. I'm absolutely sure it has. But I can tell you that I know a lot of authors who have published over the last 10 years. I don't know a single one that has had this problem. You know, you would think if it were something that were a serious issue, that it would happen. That's not to say that it couldn't, but I also think that if you act from the perspective that people are going to steal your work when you engage with them, that makes it less likely for them to trust you. And it makes it difficult for you to build a writing career, build connections with people, because you're coming from a place of scarcity. So, you know, put a copyright page on the front part of your book, right? You know, document everything. And I think that's all you can do. Okay. And the final comment here is that Richard says, I'm at Ingram Spark and they say my paperback ISBN is in use. Yes, at Amazon, but I thought I'm supposed to use the same ISBN.
I do use the same ISBN.
So do I.
Ingram and
so do
Amazon.
Yeah, you may have to reach out to their customer service on that,
Yeah.
Richard. Sorry, I don't have a good answer for you on that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you know, we are over time, so I think we're going to have to cut it off here. But thank you, everybody, for your questions. And if you liked what you heard here and you haven't heard Sacha and I's podcast, please go to selfpublishingadvice.org. And there's a podcast tab. You can subscribe. We're on all the podcast networks. You know, wherever you listen to your podcasts, we are there. And we'd love to have you join us every month for our syndicated show. And we will be back in May for another live show. So,
and in person at the London Book Fair.
And in person at London Book Fair. I'll be there on March 12th. Sacha will be there on March 13th. We'd love to meet you in person. And thanks again, everybody, for a great session. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.